Hey guys, this is the Any Thoughts podcast. It's me, Bennett.
It's me, B-Rad.
This is me, Big Mo. What's up?
Yeah, Abby, what's up?
So today we're going to be talking about a movie called Tales from the Hood. It's kind of like a horror, not really, but it has some supernatural elements, and it kind of depicts the struggles that African Americans go through in the U.S., as well as putting in some more like fantastical elements that happen to certain racist characters in the show or the movie. But with that, I'll hand it off to Brad, where you can do a proper introduction of what the movie's about.
So yes, this movie we had mentioned earlier in one of our podcasts. Callback. So the movie was directed by, again, sorry interruption, by Rusty Cundiff and produced by Darren Scott. Actually, fun fact about Rusty Cundiff, it was that he was a director on The Chappelle Show, which is a really cool fact. And Rusty also played the teacher in the second part of Tales from the Hood, the light-skinned teacher with dreads.
He was a cool teacher.
And so this movie was made for about $6 million back in 1995, and which adjusted for inflation is about $10 million, and made about double that amount, so made about $12 million in return. Released in about 900 theaters. So for a movie made for on the cheap, talking about the black struggle, and it ended up doubling its cost, was a really good move, and it kind of became a cult classic. So I guess the main questions I want to bring up to you guys, and I want our audience to hear or not, is this movie really as impactful and important to today's issues that we're facing right now? Is it really a horror film? What's our opinion on that? And is this movie? Can we still recommend this movie? How well does the movie hold up with some of the effects in it? And so I'm gonna pass it off to Amog, because I know Amog wants to say something real quick. You want to go on, Amog?
Okay. So thanks, Brad. So here's my understanding of the whole this thing. It's so relevant because seeing how relevant this is to the current scenario with like George Floyd, and like back then in the 90s in LA, I think there was something similar to which happened in the 90s, which happened in LA when a couple of cops beat on another black guy, which they had pulled over, and that led to massive riots in LA and all over the country. But it wasn't to the same exposure as it is now because of social media. So they have, in fact, like the first story which they have depicted where an activist is.
Well, first, let me do a quick synopsis about the movie. So the movie, yeah. So the movie takes place majority in a funeral home where you have these three gangsters who go into this funeral home to get the shit. And
I got you did.
Oh man, Clarence Williams is a great actor. So they go into this funeral home and they meet a mortician, Clarence Williams, who is showing them around the funeral home and showing them the different people who have died at the funeral home. One person who we see first is about racial injustice when it comes to cops. And the second person is someone who has been a bad father. The third person is depicting bad political leaders. And the fourth person is depicting horrible gang violence. So again, a lot of these topics they're mentioning back in the 90s, could be seen as applicable to today. But Amo, go on with your topic. Go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So back to what I was saying, that back then it was still within, it was very fresh within the memory of people, if I'm not mistaken, that this person was attacked and pulled over by cops, and then he was beaten and like he sustained multiple fractures, and then after that nothing happened to the cops. Like in fact they got off scot free, and like in fact if I'm not mistaken there were multiple riots and in LA after that, and very very resonant with the tumultuous times we live in right now. So like I think the first thing which I would like to point out is it is relevant. That first story was so relevant, but like certain creative liberties that were taken, I wasn't really impressed with. Like this guy comes back from the dead as a zombie, and he starts flying around and biting people's head off.
That's where like I wanted you to finish your point, but I have a kind of different perspective on that situation. which is like, I think we should give a more elaborate detail of what happens in the movie first. So basically, like, the first tale is depicting police brutality, right? But something we failed to mention so far is that there was a new police officer who was black, and he was in a group of 4 other white officers. He begins to protest the fact that, hey, you can't do that to this man. He's not doing anything wrong. And they just tell him, hey, get back in the car. Do you want to keep your career? You know? And so the story later tells us that he ends up quitting the force after what happened, and he couldn't kind of live with himself. And what you see is that he kind of became a drunk, you know, and or maybe he did other drugs. And so the thing is, like, in a weird way, I feel like he may have tackled on some kind of like psychosis in a way. And that's the thing, because the perspective of the end of the story is that he's the one going to jail, you know, because it's like nobody's going to believe what happened. And so it kind of brought in a kind of question to me of like, they start saying, oh, he starts hearing voices, oh, he starts hearing this, you know. So it's like, what perspective are we actually seeing in the film? Are we seeing his perspective, or are we seeing an outward review where this happened? And that's my thing. It's like, you can't really say, and who knows, maybe he was just harboring onto his guilt the entire time, and he created a kind of depiction in his mind of what would happen. Because once again, he's the one that calls the cops there.
That's the thing. I was going to come to that. I was exactly coming to that because I didn't like the visual way they depicted it. There could have been a more and like using at least at that time there were movies that were depicting psychosis and like that have effectively portrayed psychosis, and like you don't have to see. My point was that simple camera work can also do the thing. I'm looking at it from a very technical standpoint. That simple camera work, I mean, using the technology, and you know, with the current budget that they had, and using the technology which they had at that time, even simple and effective camera work could have easily depicted psychosis or like a hallucination very effectively. So I didn't like that.
But I mean,
like that. But
I think that's the argument, though. Like, that's what the ambiguity is. It's like, is this a horror film or is this like a horror of reality? You know, like that's what that's the thing. Like, I think it's shot in that way to make it you think like, oh, this is like a zombie movie, you know, somebody getting revenge. But then when you look back at the last scene of that tale, you see that maybe this was all in his head, you know, and like that's kind of, you know, that's what I think they're trying to bring. Like, you can't give a straight answer because you don't know.
Yeah, and to I was going to say something. So one thing I must say about this movie just in general, the transitions between scenes, I must say, is pretty well. But I love the transition between all the scenes as going from Clarence Williams, the mortician, is saying, and here we go to the next story with his big eyes, his gap teeth. I love how he just moves everything around. But going back to story one, I was going to say, man, I kind of, what you're saying, man, I know some of the subtle features, like blood on the leaves, talking about the hanging black bodies in story one. The camera movement of how they move the camera around to show the panic nature of the cops. But and also the message of, you know, I like the end message of it with the zombie attacking the black officer at the end, saying, "For where were you?" You know, kind of like in George Floyd's case. You know, you have all these officers around, and you see me, I'm getting fucked up. Let's step in. All these officers around.
But you know, I kind of felt bad because he tried to step in. You know, that's the thing. Like, it wasn't like he just sat back down, but it's like, you know, like, he could have put more of a fight, but they probably would have killed him too. You know, thinking like, oh, here's our excuse.
But he admits that he should have reported them at the end.
Yeah, but I mean, and I think that's why he couldn't really live with himself afterwards. Like, I think that's why you see him kind of like in a deteriorated state, you know? So, like, yeah, I agree with the sentiment of like, where were you? But I think like he also is kind of dealt a rough hand in that regard, you know? Like, it isn't just cut and dry.
No, and that's like life, you know. You always feel like you can always do more, but you know, sometimes you don't do enough. But one thing I will say that's something bad about this first story is the villains. The villains, I feel like they play it up a little bit too hard, a bit here and there.
Yeah.
Especially some of the
You know, it actually kind
pissing
of
on the
pissed
dude's
me
grave.
off. Like, it was weird. Like, I don't know, like just the ample use of boy all the time, and like just kind of like, showing them like how shitty like cops could be.
Well,
Like
again,
it actually made me like upset, and I was like, huh. Like, and to the point, like, that used to happen though. So it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like,
and it still
like,
happens to today. And
yeah.
that's the sad part.
Well, I mean, one thing I was thinking about is, did it really explain how the guy died?
Uh,
They overdosed him on heroin.
yeah, and they
Uh,
drove his car off the bridge.
well,
Oh,
no. How the psychotic, the police officer, the black police officer, did they
uh,
Oh,
explain
he
how
just
he
went to
died?
jail.
yeah, he was in a
But
mental asylum. He might,
I maybe go ahead.
yeah. I mean, he could have just been crazy and not eating his food and died like that.
Mm.
But
Well, I asked that because I kind of see a trend with each scene a little bit. I wrote it down because I had some questions about it, but I don't want to jump the gun and talk about it just yet.
yeah,
But I mean, kind of dealing with police brutality, just kind of going back to, like whether this relates to, how it is in the black community. I definitely think it does relate to, realities that do happen in the black community, even to this day, kind of answering Brad's question. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the one thing I noticed throughout each of the tales, and this is kind of just brushing over them, is that in each situation, there was always a guy that noticed, there's an issue with something. Like we see with the police brutality, the black guy noticed there's an issue. And the next one, we noticed that the teacher noticed there was an issue. The politician, kind of like his vice guy, noticed there was an issue. And then the gang violence, the lady that helped him notice there was an issue. So that was like one thing I noticed with each thing.
yeah,
But I guess we could talk about that later on a little bit more.
yeah. Does anybody else want to add anything else about this tale? Anything good or bad you noticed before we move on to the next one?
Yeah. In fact, another thing which I noticed was, which I think Ivy mentioned it. It's like, he the cop, the young buck was, he the activist pretty much caught the young buck by the neck, and he was like, okay, where were you? And that scene is like, it's like, even in sense of modern commentary, it's also like a knock. It's like basically it's a hard knock on the door of those people who have just who have put their legs up and said, okay, you know what, it's not my problem if it's not affecting me.
Yeah,
There are a lot
Yeah.
of people who are
Mm.
complacent. I obviously don't want to take names, or I don't want to like point fingers at anyone, but there are a lot of people who are dealing with their own shit, and I understand. But at the end of the day, if it affects one, it affects thousands, if not millions. Because at the end of the day, you're a community, and
yeah,
irrespective of whether you say that it's not affecting you, one fine day it will, and when it does, the very people you
shunned,
shunned and blocked out,
ignored. Yeah,
and ignored,
Mm.
shunned, ignored, blocked out, because you didn't consider them as part of your circle as a whole. They in fact, at the end of the day, they will be the ones who come and fucking side by you and stand by you. So it's like it's a knock on the head of those people who say, you know what, maybe it's best not to be fucking complacent.
exactly.
So
All
that's
right.
one good thing which I loved, in fact.
Yeah, that's a very good message Left is on. But let's move on to story 2. And I don't know if you know this, but it's about a bad father, and most of the story takes place in the point of view of a child. So that already is tugging at your heartstrings when you see a kid being abused and being hurt. And luckily his teacher, Rusty Cunders, who was the director of this movie, notices that, hey, he's getting hurt, what's going on? And again, we always see this quote unquote monster in the eyes of this kid, and that's something I really did like. But then at the end, the kid and the teacher and his mother fight off the abusive, step-husband and destroying him. So I just want to start this off by saying, again, I love how grounded this story is. I love the fact that we're seeing this in a point of view of the child, in his imagination. Like every time we see this monster come in to his room and he's crying in tears, we see his claws, we hear his growly voice, we hear his monstrous steps coming closer and closer to the door. I really like that because that shows how a kid's overactive imagination works, you know. And one thing I'm gonna wait to say what I have something bad about this, but I feel like this is a very applicable to the Black community because how many times have you heard about Black sports players and celebrities beating on their children? You know, I believe Tyreek Hill, he was fined and caught for beating his kid. You know, like there's been plenty of, and Adrian Peterson, another famous Black athlete, who he beat his kid so bad that he left welts and broke his arm. You know, there's been plenty of famous Black people who have beaten their kids senselessly. And again, I think that's making a message on the whole Black community. Like, hey, listen, let's treat our children, well, any parent, I guess, let's treat our kids with respect. I understand, they may get out of line here and there, but there's no need to leave bruises and to have them being tormented like this kid was in this movie. But I'll pass it off to Iverson real quick.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a pretty, like, when I first saw that scene, I was, kind of wondering what was going on. And then what I really noticed was kind of like piggybacking off what Brad was saying, like, that's also, another reality that happens that, may happen in homes, like whether you're Black or white or anything of the sort. But it's crazy to think that, kind of looking back and listening to what Brad said, like the kid, even though that wasn't like his biological father, he saw like his caretaker as like a monster. And I was just sitting there thinking, throughout the movie, I was like, what? Like at first I'm like, what monster is he talking about? Is he just imagining things? And I'm like, oh, maybe it could be the dad or whatnot. But I just thought how it was so cool how Rusty, the director and the teacher in the movie, he stood up for that kid in that situation. And, and like I was thinking about it and I'm like, yeah. Yeah. But no, but like one thing I noticed is like in the first two scenes, like there were guys who stood up, for those Black kids or for the Black guy. And then in the second scene, the Black kid, like in the police brutality, you had the police officer stand up for the Black guy. And then you had the teacher stand up for the Black kid. And then like thinking about that, does that really happen? Like in the Black community, do we have people that stand up?
Yeah, I mean,
for like other Black people,
I feel like we do here and there. I think that's a good question to ask for story 4 or the gang violence one, but I think yes, they do. I think definitely. I think anybody who sees a child being abused by a guardian is going to ask questions and is going to poke and prod and get the answers they need to make sure this kid's it's safe and secure.
Yeah. I mean, what I think I was saying is like, does that happen though, like all the time?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think,
Does
like,
that actually? Yeah.
I think the thing is like, if we look at Floyd, I think that rallying and martyring, that definitely happens. But do you think on a larger scale? I'd say it's like 50-50.
Maybe 50-50. Unfortunately.
To answer your question, Ivy, it's a great question. What you asked, or do people really stand up? I think inherently there are people that will stand up. Inherently, human nature is like, hey, if something bad is happening, you will want to naturally help someone. It's an inherent ability that we as humans have. But over time, of course, like it's because of human greed and like, or the more biblical, in the more biblical sense, human avarice as it is, and like our entire sense of nonchalance has pretty much made us not care. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any upstanding citizens, like I think that of course, like Benny said, the teacher probably just wanted to clap some cheeks. But that doesn't.
The teacher didn't know what his mother looked like.
That's true. She tempted him, but he didn't fall for it.
Here's the thing.
Like at first, he wanted to help the kid.
Brad, Brad, it's
Cue the
guy.
your son
Listen,
memes.
Brad. 1 second, Brad. The guy knew that this guy comes from a tumultuous household and that he's being raised by a single mother. He knew because public services keeps a fucking record. He knew.
Again,
It's not like he
but he
didn't
didn't know
know,
what she looked like.
bro.
Yeah, like I was making the joke in terms of like when he got there.
Yeah, when he
Like,
got there. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, when he
you know,
got
like
there, when he
I
got
was
there,
making it.
when
I
he
was making
got
it
there,
for
it must
that
have been
joke.
like fucking jackpot. Like when he got there, he's like jackpot. But that's not the point. That's not the point. My point is that yeah, inherently there are good people and who are inherently also very good who want to do good, and like that. So that teacher is like gold standard. Like of course that's like he's an like extreme example of like fucking fighting against this abuser and shit. Like the most logical thing he could have done was call the cops and like fucking end things then and there, which like but instead like then again it's like liberty with like dramatics and stuff, which is fine, but like I actually enjoyed that movie with like Brad said, that it's from the standpoint, it's not standpoint, it's from the point of view of a child who sees the aggressor as a monster, and with like claws and like like kind of like a werewolf and or a bear, and it's like it just shows like how traumatized this child's psyche must be to like see his uncle or like his
Stepdad, I think.
legal guardian.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Stepdad.
stepdad. It looks like.
Stepdad or whoever as as a monster, and like this brings to light so many accounts from like here's the thing, like there's something known as a Jungian archetype, and this is something which I was reading about. Like some when people like mental patients, they when they are like or like paranoid. If I'm not mistaken, the correct term for this, the appropriate medical term for them is paranoid schizophrenics. They when they feel like when they are having like an episode, they feel they're being tormented by something known as a Jungian archetype, and in some cases they can be scarecrows, like like it's mentioned in Batman Begins. Um, and in some cases it can be a monster, and of course in this case this kid is not a paranoid schizophrenic, but what I'm trying to say is that the way he viewed this his stepdad or someone as a monster, that was, I think, that really caught my eye. Like
Yeah,
seeing your external tormentor as a monster it's very creative, and
yeah,
it
I like that a lot.
that and the way like whatever this kid drew, and like like towards the end of the movie, like when he crushes his uncle and like
Yeah.
sorry stepdad, and like the stepdad like twists at a weird angle, that was a bit excessive in my opinion, that like it like he fucking like got twisted and like burned and shit, and I was like, okay,
Mm.
what the fuck is going on? Like that was like
Again, and that was kind of like my problem with this story is, um, where do these powers come from? because
Yeah, I mean the other thing is, did you
you can,
notice the kid that got bullied also like ended
yeah,
up in the hospital from his
Yeah.
drawing?
yeah. 'Cause,
Yeah.
because in the first story, you can play it off as, hey, maybe this cop went crazy and killed these three cops, and in the second story, like you like, how does he get, like, where does he get these powers from?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he
Mm.
talks to a girl and she says, "Just draw what you hate on a piece of paper and then destroy it." I was like, okay, listen, I love the whole setup, and that was such a small part of
Mm.
the story that I can just let it go and say, hey, you know what? It's just for
Yeah.
dramatics. But I want you guys to know, that actor who played the stepfather, he's actually a comedian. His name is David Allen Greer. He's been in stuff like in Living in Color. He
I
was in
knew he was
Martin.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, he was
I've
in
seen him
Greer.
before.
He's actually he's pretty funny. He's a really famous comedian. And I'm surprised that you can get these comedians to have so much range to be these people. Like, again, he played the evil stepfather in this, and he played it very well. You believe that he was somebody who beat his own
He
child.
did. He
Well,
did.
Well, that's
He
like
played Martin
have you
well.
guys heard about the controversy with like Chris D'Elia? I think that's
oh
his
dude,
name. Like he's been doing a lot of like stuff like on Snapchat with like 16, 17, 8-year-old girls, 18-year-old girls, and like it's just kind of blown up in his face. But he did 2 roles He was like, I guess, the weird comedian in You, which he was like a pedophile on that one. And then in another show, he was another pedophile as well. And it turns
So
out he's an actual
basically, so
pedophile.
basically, so basically, he was just doing character acting.
He was being
He
himself.
was just doing
Yeah.
character roles.
He was being
He's doing
himself.
character roles.
Oh boy.
Or basically, it was basically the directors and producers' way of outing this guy. Like I just call that fucking divine intervention. Which like,
Honestly, like, it's weird, but like I always feel like Hollywood knows, and then they're like, "You're gonna take this
Yeah.
role,
Yeah.
or we're gonna tell everybody," you know? Because like that's not the first time this has happened to somebody. Like I can't remember a few cases, but like somebody also recently, like in Me Too, had something they did that it's like, well, why did we never see this before? I just can't remember who I'm thinking of.
I mean Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein.
Yeah.
I'm saying Harvey Specter. That guy's in suits. That guy's a chill guy. Harvey Weinstein. Like when Kate Beckinsale pretty much came out with she came out on like Instagram and she said, you know, that Harvey Weinstein pretty much invited her over to his place and he gave her a fucking dress down. He called her a bitch and a slut and you know so many not so very polite words. So you know it's this was like another thing which like people weren't shocked, but then like at this point like after that they like pretty much like okay after when like multiple celebrities came on like Instagram and like support of Beckinsale and like talked about her stories, their stories and horror stories with Weinstein, I was like okay, this dude's fucked.
Yeah.
But anyways, moving on to Tale 3.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
So yeah,
The
so
setup
Tell
basically
3,
is. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
so Tell 3 is about a racist politician who has ties to the KKK. I wonder who that could be. And he is living at an old plantation slave house, a White House, so to speak. And
Yeah, plantation.
yeah, and
I'm just going to go on a whim and say blink, 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 blink.
So yes, he moved into this old plantation slave house, which apparently is haunted by these dolls.
I'm sorry, that was funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
by
Go
these
ahead.
dolls who are
He got
possessed
so
by
racist at
former
the end.
slaves of the slave plantation. So I'll let you guys go on real quick.
Well, I mean, like, the reason I think me and Iverson are laughing is basically at the end when all the dolls come to life, he gets so
Yeah.
racist.
Yeah, he got really racist.
Yeah,
Like,
he started calling them niglets and stuff. Like,
Mhm.
I was like, oh my god. I was like,
I'm
Jesus.
sorry.
Well, again, he has ties to
Okay,
KKK.
guys, I'm
Well, so-
sorry. I shouldn't be laughing. Sorry to interrupt you. I shouldn't be laughing at this, and I got called out. Apparently, saying the N word is wrong. Surprise, surprise. I didn't know this at all. Like it was not obvious to me. But like holy shit, dude! Like the way he started saying that, like just slinging the N word around, I was like, fam, like really, it's like, dude, are you serious? Like after so many years, have you still not learned your fucking lesson? Like,
Again.
This is like a question I want to address to like all like you know people with like the white supremacists, the neo Nazis, and like it's just in general any of these people who have associations to the fact that they own that they're the shit. Like, bro, all your resources are on the back or are literally on the back of indigenous species, black people, brown people, and literally every other fucking community that you have fucking terrorized and uprooted from their homes to fulfill your fucking greed. And not to mention also like this is something which like really fucked me up. Like the guy who was like helping him like build an image was a black guy.
Yeah.
He was a fucking black guy, and I was like, yo, this like takes me back to the time when they started slave trade. I'm like, black people fucking selling their own people.
But I mean, that's always the joke, right? Like sometimes you'll meet black people who try to be like white people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like it's normally if they no, but that's the thing. It's normally if they get into a position of power, like it's like say you have like a guidance counselor at the university or something like that, and then they try to be bigger than what they are. It's something along those lines. That's why, like, I didn't necessarily see the guy advising him being wrong because I felt like he basically hired him to try and connect with those people.
Exactly.
But then I feel like at the same time, the politician kept pushing away his ideas and so it's like they never really got anywhere.
But again, two things with that. One thing, Candace Owens, she's a black person who tries to put down black people, is to go on your point of mode. And another thing is that this black person who was helping out the racist politician in this story 3, he was more of a lighter skin persuasion. So he could, like, there's this thing called passing in the black community. So if you can look the least bit black in the black community, it's kind of a leg up in society. And
Yeah.
say, but
That's why there's a joke about light skins and dark skins.
yeah. And another thing is that he knew what this guy was. It wasn't like he knew what he was, and he knew he had a huge job ahead of him to get him to say the right kind of like I guess more of a Bush than Trump, trying to get him to say the right words without offending too many people. But in the background, he's actually doing things that actually hurt the black community.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I liked how again he died first in the movie because the doll said, "Motherfucker, you should have known fucking better."
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the lesson right there. He should have known better.
That image makers, that media image makers, he reminded me of another recent movie which came out, which has Lekith, if I'm not mistaken, Lekith Stanfield in it. It's called Sorry to Bother You, where this black guy adopts something known as a white voice.
Yeah.
And like it's also like supernatural, and it's just very different. And something about Sorry to Bother You and like this story, like it just rung so true, and so it was so resonant that I was like, holy shit, man! It's like it's and this isn't a problem. This is a thing which I've noticed with all minorities. This isn't just a thing with just black people, prevalent with black people. There are so many brown people I know who they're ashamed of like brown culture, like Indian people, like of my predisposition and like from the motherland, so to speak. They are, or from the mothership, as most of us like to say. They just like they come to the US. They try to. I mean, okay, it's fine. Like you want to be part. You want to you want to be part, and you want to be included. You want to feel included with like American culture and like American this thing. But American culture isn't just fucking bitches and getting drunk. So it's so much more. It's so much more, and it's so much more deeper. And it's like these people, they adopt the American culture and they literally behave like, they look down on their fellow Indians, and they try to be white as they can be, and it really pisses me off. Yeah. And like this is something which I want to point out, and I think fair enough, and I think I want to point out, and I want to say that you don't have to try to be white. Really, I think it's suffice to say that white people have not created anything great on this planet. They really haven't. And if they have created anything great, it's on the backbone of people like us. So I'm sorry I'm taking it on a political tangent.
Yeah.
But like it's like when I say white people, I'm only talking about these white supremacists, the white racists. Mm-hmm. So I mean not white racists, just racists in general. And just like neo-Nazis, all these people, like they have anything that has been built, it has been built on the backbone of hardworking, the bourgeois and the hardworking middle class. I'm sorry. Let's face it.
Well, I think one thing with, just from what I saw in the movie, one thing I noticed that the guy said, the media guy, was he a vice president or a media manager? Like, what was he?
He was his PR
media manager.
Like his PR.
Okay, so like one thing I thought of was, I'm pretty sure the president or the mayor, whoever that guy was, his white supremacist, I'm pretty sure he paid that guy because he was black. He wanted to, I guess, find a way to kind of connect with the community. But like one thing that I noticed with the light skin guy said is like even he realized like what the guy was doing wrong, because there was a scene in there he was like, oh man, like that's not right, or he said something like that, or like what you're doing. Yeah.
So spooks is a racist term that's used to describe, I guess, I can't say it's Ku Klux Klan members because of the white hoods, because it's like ghosts and specters or spooks, or what they call black people when they're dressed as Ku Klux Klan members and they scare them out their neighborhoods, you know. But he said spooks, and spooks is a term usually like again a term like the N word, porch monkey, spade. Like he said, spade. You know, like those are all terms that are used to describe black people. Very negative connotations, like the N word.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say spooks, it's like trying to call a cop a pig. It's literally the same thing.
Well,
going on, you have more to say?
Oh no, I mean, yeah. So that was pretty much it. I just noticed that he used him to kind of like appeal to the black people, but I mean, ended up not working. But yeah, I mean, I felt bad for kind of laughing because when the dolls started attacking him, and then when the Harriet Tubman looking lady like appeared, I'm sorry, I just died laughing. It was 3 a.m. and I'm like, what?
It was like, oh guys, this is where we went.
But like, one thing I noticed is the first three, and then I'll get to you, Mo. Like, one thing I noticed is the first three scenes with the police brutality, the boy, and then the dolls, is that did they die? Like, did the boy die in the movie? Did the guy?
No, the boy lived.
The boy lived. It was.
So why was the movie like showing them in a coffin?
It was the husband.
No, they're showing the person who died.
They showed that the stepfather was burned to a crisp in this thing. So like when you see the coffin, it's like the stepfather is like burned to a crisp.
Yeah, he was in there. That's right. I thought the boy was in there.
Okay. Like in the first scene, it's the coffin for the guy who actually died.
Yeah.
And then the second one, it's the stepfather.
Gotcha.
Okay. The third one, they just show the doll.
Yeah, but one thing I must say again, Clarence Williams transitions. Yes, the shits. But first, let's talk about this doll real quick. I just love. Again, I wonder if you guys caught the twist towards the end just by paying attention to him and noticing kind of things about him that was going on. But let's not mention that towards the end with the whole twist with Clarence Thomas' character.
There's one scene which really like, I was like, and I was so happy when I saw it. It's like that the voodoo practitioner, the witch, when she comes, like when she leaves the painting and she comes, like she kind of comes to life, and like then he's surrounded by all those slaves who like who've been like done dirty, I guess.
Yes.
It looks like Robot Chicken, honestly. They look like Robot Chicken.
Sorry?
They look like Robot Chicken, the little dolls.
The animation of it,
the animation of that was a little shit. Like, I mean, green screen pretty much didn't exist until like let's face it, green screen didn't exist till like fucking 2008 and shit. Like, green screen was just shit back then. So like I mean when you compare like Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6 versus Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, like you can see the fucking difference in like quality of like animation and shit. Like fucking Yoda doesn't look like he's like.
That's true.
He doesn't look like he's fucking spastic. Again, I don't mean to like make fun of people who are spastic. I'm just saying that the emotion is very hindered, I guess. I don't know, man.
We include everybody on this podcast.
I'm trying to be as politically correct, even though I decided not to be politically correct on this podcast. I'm tired of it. Fuck liberals. Seriously.
Right, but
no, I'm sorry. Again, this is
let's stick with the main point of this review is, Mo. Understand.
Part 4.
My main point was not just.
We got your point.
My point was that entire scene was beautiful. Like I was like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what Black Vengeance fucking looks like. So to all those, whiteys, to all those.
Yeah, I have one more thing I want to add.
Yeah.
Part of this third tale, like they show black people protesting and they're talking about reparations. And one of the things I want to ask is like, do you think reparations should happen? For me, I personally say no, because now people aren't responsible for what happened. But I would have argued saying yes to reparations, say like when the slaves were just free. you know. But it's an interesting point that they decided to show that in that part of the movie.
You know, when you're talking about reparations, it's like has anybody seen Watchmen,
Yeah.
the
Interesting.
series? So that all explores the alternate universe where Robert Redford becomes the president and he ends up paying the Tulsa riot victims the money. So essentially, the black community becomes like one of the richest communities in the world, like in the US, and that like builds tension to the point where like literally the like racism literally just shoots out of fucking control. And that show made me just genuinely think about this the entire like Juneteenth thing which recently happened with like a certain political leader holding a rally and
The day after.
yeah, I'm not going to take names because we don't want to be demonetized, but a certain political leader got and a lot of zoomers pretty much, as they are called, zoomers pretty much hacked into his entire rally, and it was a no show. So they pretty much cancelled a certain political leader who
See,
may not
that's
be
what
running
I
for a
like. If we're gonna talk
presidential.
about canceling, though, that's how we should cancel. It's like whenever we get like a controversial speaker at UF, right? Everybody goes. But honestly, like the best thing to do if you really want to cancel somebody is just grab the ticket and then don't show up. Because it just shows them that they're not wanted here, and then whoever they are talking to is going to be like maybe like 20 people out of the 1,000 you expected. Like that's what I feel like people should cancel. Not just straight up, oh, you said something racist in the past. Like you're dead. Like it should be like if this person is in some kind of avenue where they thrive on public speaking, just buy out all the tickets and then don't show up. Don't give them a platform.
But to get back on topic with the movie, a couple of things I found kind of not so good with it. One thing, that crazy black person that came up and said dolls want reparations. I felt
Yeah.
that was like he basically gave us the whole plot of the movie, and I felt that was kind of just I didn't like that. I much would have had it better if it would have been like if we were discovering like these dolls, this house is haunted, and
Yeah.
somebody flat out saying these dolls have been blah blah blah, and they're like, okay, you
I
couldn't
was
have
like,
that.
yeah, Brad, that crazy guy was just a fucking spoiler, dude. Like,
Yeah,
he literally
Yeah.
like I think he should have just dressed up naked with like a tea cozy saying I'm a spoiler.
exactly. Like again, with those first two stories, I liked how we learned what was happening as the story was progressing, and I felt like with this third story that they had to explain things to us because of how weird of a story it was going to be. But another couple of things. Again, yeah. Well, I liked how I liked how he used an American flag to try to fight off the dolls. That was something that I liked, the illusion, like you using the quote unquote America kind of way to kill these dolls and everything like that. But again, let's move on to the fourth and final story, where Clarence Thomas, Clarence Williams begins to talk about the final story about a gangster. And this one depicts about gang violence and gang issues that is facing the black community. So it starts off with a gang member named K, who has a K literally cut into his hair, actually, which is pretty funny.
Wow.
Follows this one member from an opposite gang back to his house, and he shoots him down, and his crew comes out and guns him down. And luckily, the cops show up and they kill the three other crew members who came to kill Crazy K after he killed his own gang, and he's been put in prison. And he's going through his political reform. And I'm gonna stop it right there, and I'm gonna quickly mention some things I liked about it, real quick. I like that they compared black on black violence to the KKK and how they're not. I mean, yes, the motives are different, but the effect is still the same. You're still killing black brothers and black sisters. The motives could be are completely different. The reasons why you're doing it, but I like how they're still like they're saying, hey, look, just because my reason of killing black people is different from your reason of killing black people, we still kill a black person at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's really upsetting to the KKK member.
Yeah, and I love the reprogramming scene. I think that was just so weird and just out of this world how they just stripped him down naked, shaved his head, shoved tubes up his body, spin him all around and everything.
Mhm.
And again, one thing I do like about this movie is that it doesn't just point the finger outward, saying that, oh, it's your fault while the black community is so bad. It's kind of pointing the finger back at us, saying, hey, look, we need to be in charge of our own things. We need to stop this black on black violence as well, because this ain't helping us at all.
Yeah.
I'll pass off to you guys real quick.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think I feel like that's the main reason why they put that one last. Because out of the first three, there was two of them, that dealt with, a white person, kind of like belittling or killing a black person. But then I've never heard that before, like comparing gang violence to the KKK. That was pretty interesting. So honestly, that was my favorite one. About that, I really like how they depicted that, and kind of like what Brad is saying. At the end of the day, it's different motives, but the same means. So
Yeah.
Personally, I've never seen it that way. But one thing that really stuck out to me was just the part when he was in the prison, and I guess it was an illusion, but we can talk about this soon. But when he was in the prison, and the guy who was down there was supposedly like a neo-Nazi or something like that. He had all the Nazi symbols saying, I'm a N-word killer or whatever. And it was fun. It was not funny, but it was crazy how he asked the black guy, Jerome, he asked him like, oh, are you going to be one of my soldiers at the front lines of my army? And the guy's like, no, I'm not. And then he's like, well, you're doing the same thing as me. You're killing black people. And I was like, man,
Yeah.
that hit me different.
He said, he not only just said that, he said, you're killing black people, and eventually those people who are killing black people will work as slaves. They won't be treated as equals. They'll be treated as slaves, and they will serve me. And I was like, bro, that's literally the second, Civil War was pretty much exactly that. And it just seems to me that things haven't changed much. It's just the times have changed, technology has changed, people, the way they outlook at things outlook towards things has changed, perhaps. But the basic fundamental problem, which is fucking racism, it's just been brushed under the rug for so many fucking years. Yeah. We say we live in enlightened times where, with like a drug, with like, inject a drug and you cure, like, you inject a drug or you inject a vaccine and you cure like multiple fucking diseases. But at the end of the day, the thing which makes you end up seeing a person as inferior or superior, or you end up thinking you're superior to someone, that hasn't gone away.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And like that,
one
thing. Yeah, just one quick thing, Benny. Sorry. Yeah. Like this really, it's like as someone who prides himself in being a realist, I'm slowly tending towards cynicism, where I'm like, I don't think this is ever going to change, and I don't think this is ever going to go away until human nature pretty much fundamentally is still fundamentally, reliant on like color and skin, and like looking at a person and saying, oh, this is not your status, or this is not your cup of tea. And I guess, cynically speaking, I don't think we're ever going to get rid of racism.
Well, I mean, the thing I liked about this last tale was that they put him in the sensory deprivation tank, and basically he has to like see basically like the last few moments of his life, where essentially he sees everybody he wronged, whether that be gang members or a little girl who accidentally got shot from one of his bullets, and he just can't accept what he's done. And then the lady who brought him in basically saying like, look, I'm trying to give you a chance of redemption. You have to take it. And his result was just getting violent, getting violent to whoever was around him, and realizing there was nobody there to begin with. Just himself alone in his thoughts. And so I think like that's what was the most interesting thing about it was. It's like if we're willing to like acknowledge these mistakes, true change can happen. But is anybody actually going to acknowledge them? No.
See, spiritually speaking, that lady who was trying to help him course correct, was basically his guardian angel, so to speak. If you think about it spiritually.
Because
she was wearing all white. You know that?
She was wearing all white, and exactly. So if you really, and like the people around, and like the people around him, they were all wearing white, and they were all like clad in white, and so basically that was essentially that was his one shot at going into heaven. And like instead he just fought it, and he just said, no, I have done nothing wrong. It's constantly been me, it's all about me, I have been wrong, this and that. And like she was literally like, listen, I'm trying to give you a chance to change, why won't you take it? And I think
Yeah.
that at its fundamental level is how humans are, how humans are, that even when we're given a chance to change, we don't want to change.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, if you really look at it, it actually puts you in the mindset of somebody who is in that sort of environment where all their lives they have been given shorthand after shorthand, that the only thing they know how to do is be the type of person that they are. And if that's all they know, that's how you expect them to act. And that's a really good question. Is it nature over nurture? Is it the environment you're surrounded in, or what people would teach you? But I guess to kind of end things off with this, at the end, with those three people we saw in the beginning of the Tales from the Hood, and as we go on into the stories, they actually are in the fourth story. They're the three gang members who actually kill Crazy K. Now,
and then they die.
Yeah, and then they die by the cops who show up. And what's really good is, I'm not sure if you guys know, so the whole twist is that they're in hell, basically.
Yeah.
Like, those three gang members are basically seeing these people's stories and lives and how people have fucked up, and now they're basically in hell. I was wondering, because I watched the movie twice, and I noticed kind of subtle things that kind of tipped me off that this guy, like Clarence Williams, his character, the shit, that guy was a devil.
Yeah, that was funny. But go ahead, bro. Sorry.
I was wondering if you guys noticed, like him sweating more and more as he told the stories.
Yeah.
And again, and as they get,
that's true.
And as he's telling more stories, they're getting close, like more and more into I guess hell. Like they start walking closer in and in until they're in the basement. Did you guys notice that? Did you guys expect that twist at the end?
I noticed the sweating, but I didn't really notice like that's what it was building to.
See, here's the thing. What I noticed was how labyrinthine, like it became more and more like a labyrinth where he's leading them through a maze, and he's eventually like leading them towards like certain listing, where he's also showing them that this is like basically in not so many ways he also showed them different rungs of hell. If you really think about it, he showed them greed, he showed them lust, he showed them power, he showed them abuse of power, he showed them basically different rungs of hell. And then, but what really pissed me off is like, why did the black guy have to turn into the devil? He could have just literally been. I'm like in a way, it kind of like pissed me off. I'm like, why are you demonizing the black guy? Like, have you guys done?
I mean,
I think they're just trying to make it relatable. Like, if they gave it to a white guy, they wouldn't have like listened to him.
Here's like another thing which I was thinking about. Like, the alternative to this thing could have been like they could have turned him into like this judge. Like, so like in Egyptian culture, there was this thing called there was the god
Anubis and everything.
Anubis, right? So Anubis pretty much measured your heart. With a feather, and the feather of truth. And if the feather of truth, pretty much like if your heart was, heavier than the feather of truth, you would, dispelled off to hell. So I think they could have done a transfer of that, because like with like the labyrinth and stuff, it kind of gave like a lot of Greek mythology also, with like Daedalus's labyrinth. This was like another thing which I thought about, and also like the vibe of like Dante's Inferno. If you think about it, abandon all hope, ye who enter.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of, I kind of disagree with you, Mo. I kind of like the fact that he was the devil, because I mean he was in control of the whole entire situation with the crew. Like he was a person that took him in and led him down. And I really like Clarence Williams' performance in this, because I mean his acting, the eyes, and just how he's this charismatic kind of dude who you want to know more about him, but yet you don't want to know too much because you feel like you're gonna get trapped by this dude.
Yeah. So
And,
he's
yeah.
basically like a spider. He's basically like a spider who's like drawing his victims in so that he can.
Yeah, no, because I
drawing
mean,
him in.
like, the moment I saw him, I was like, yeah, he's gonna kill him. I just don't know how yet. But then, but then it was like, towards the end, I was thinking like, oh, maybe he will give him the shit, But then it's like that was a good twist at the end,
Yeah, no, I really liked that twist. That was a really good twist because when I first watched it, I was like, oh, it makes sense. Like now, everything kind of makes sense with how like the supernatural powers came in, and with the dolls and how he said, I actually came here to steal this doll, and it actually makes sense because taking artifacts of possessed power and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it was funny overall.
But here's another thing which I was like, I love that. I'm like, the devil smokes Cubans. Think about it, guys.
Yes.
The devil smokes Cubans. So like it's like
Yeah, he did in the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
It's like a nod to the fact that the devil appreciates the finer things in life. So guys, appreciate the finer things in life.
Well, I mean, I think one of the best things with the movie starts with Skeleton smoking a joint. Like, and then the gun in his hand. Like, I was like, okay, I feel this way.
Again,
like, you can half expect like the dude is gonna like they're gonna like as you just half expect Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre to like show up and like la da 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 da.
Yeah.
So
But but I guess kind of wrap this up. I guess go around the room real quick. How would you list your best to your worst story? For me, it would be it's tough. I would say it will be a tie between stories 1 and 2, and then 4 and 3. 1 and 2, 2 is really up there for me because we've seen the child get abused, and that's always going to pull anybody's heartstrings. Seeing the kid get abused, especially by somebody who's supposed to protect them. And 1 is really applicable to what's happening today. And I really love what 4 does, but 3 to me is kind of the worst because that one has like the most holes story-wise. Well, I'll go around the table. Iris, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say that ranking, I really like the last one, so I'll put 4 first.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put The Boy and the Stepdad second, police brutality number 1, third, so 4, 2, 1, and then 3. And the reason why, kind of like what I was saying before with why I really like the 4th one, it just really just gave me a different view, and it kind of like twisted the movie a little bit because I thought the whole movie was just going to be about how Black people are struggling, but that story kind of talked about how Black people are struggling because of our own selves, and that's where I really feel like that really hit me differently. I mean, when the neo-Nazi guy said that, I was just eating my lunch or whatever, and I was just like, man, like, sorry about that. I was like, man, like, that's crazy. Never thought about it that way. But then also another thing, and I'm just gonna say this really quickly, but then I was thinking, like, are gangs also like institutionalized like by the government? I mean, I have to look up more history on it.
Yeah.
But like, do you feel like I hate to say this, but do you feel like the government, they're kind of like not lenient towards gangs, but I guess maybe not as enforcing all the time against gangs because it's a way of just
it's a
killing us? I hate to
question,
say that.
right? Because the way that I look at that kind of question is you think about like drug use in America, right? So you think about basically, let's just use weed as an example. The reason why weed hasn't been legal, and the number one reason really is because prisons make money after institutionalizing Black people. Like, that is the number one reason. Like, the only groups that are really pushing against legalizing weed are the prison unions and pharmaceutical companies. And it's because they profit off of cheap labor. So, I mean, I think, like, they could be lenient in the sense of, like, well, if we let them kill off each other, we can just grab the scraps and putting them into the prison, like, that could be the argument to it. Because I think they just want more and more people in prison till they profit off of it, you know.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good point. But yeah, that's pretty much all I'd say. And Benny, I guess you want? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll go with mine. I think my favorite tale is the first one. I think because it's like interesting that this movie was made in '95 and like it just perfectly encapsulates like what is happening right now still, you know? Maybe not to the extent of overusing the words and the high amount of racism, but that racism is still pretty prevalent. The fourth one is my second favorite because I think it's a really interesting way for somebody to like try and think about what they've done and try to see that like they weren't in the right, but then it can't really acknowledge that that happens. And then when they're faced with an opposing view of somebody doing the exact same thing as them, they kind of stop for a second and realize, oh, whoa, what I've been doing is wrong, you know, but it's still hard for them to acknowledge it's the same thing. Then my third one is probably The Kid. It was just an interesting story overall. It kind of gave me like a Goosebumps vibe, which is pretty cool. And then the last one's number 3 as well. Just because, like, while I like the story of number 3, I don't really think there was any morality lesson there. It was more just like, here's a racist guy who owned a plantation house.
Okay. Right. So my understanding of this entire movie, it's like in terms of review, like my favorite was the last story, because for me it's like understanding redemption, understanding like your ability to like accept that okay, these are your faults, and like and ask for forgiveness. It doesn't make you a weaker person; it makes you actually stronger. So that's like one thing. And just a minute, guys. Just a minute.
Oh.
Yeah. So sorry, guys. So the second and so that was the ranking. So the fourth tale was like my favorite, and then like between there's a tie between for the second one between the KKK and the little kid, because I think on par they were kind of on par in terms of like supernatural element, and like it like the transition between those two tales was also really smooth. So I think I enjoyed those supernatural this thing because I like esoteric stuff. And I think last but not the least was the first one for me. Not because of that, but the reason it was last was because of like the zombie flying around and like biting people's heads off and shit. I was like bit excessive if you ask me. But like in terms of like what's relevant, in terms of what is going on, like with the entire George Floyd situation, I was like, okay, shit, man, this kind of makes
to continue on. I guess one of the biggest things I want to ask you guys is, I can literally see Jordan Peele coming in and taking this movie and remaking it to a modern time, because I think there's a lot to do here, and it's kind of doing the same thing.
There's a second one, right? There's a second one that's on Netflix. I don't know.
Is it as good? Probably not. Right?
It's not as good. I've seen it. Trust me. It's bad, but honestly, if someone like a Jordan Peele would attach their name onto this and actually make a newer, better version of this, I think it would be very good. And out of 10, I will give it a solid 9. Again, there are some issues in the movie that I find kind of like, okay, these are clear issues. Like, again, some of the technology hasn't really answered, been well, some of these effects, stuff like that. So that can kind of take people out the movie. And again, some of the plot holes in the movie I feel like are kind of egregious. So yeah, what would you guys add the whole movie as a whole out of 10?
Probably go to 7.
7?
I mean, like, it was enjoyable for sure. It had an interesting vibe to it. But I mean, like, in terms of like impact, I mean, like, I liked the stories, but I think like they were kind of too short in a sense to really drive home like a bigger part of the narrative. Like, I think if this was like redone, it would be kind of nicer to see these topics like expanded. Like number 4 could have been its own thing on like gang violence, and like you could have really explored that kind of mental anguish of the character. So I mean, but in terms of like driving home a message, I think it did a really good job. But I think in hindsight, comparing it to something of like today, it gets a 7. It's kind of hard to measure it up to what was out in '95.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm actually gonna do the average between you guys. I'm gonna do an 8 for this movie. And one thing I just realized about the fourth scene or the fourth story is that oh man, what was I gonna say? Yeah, so it pretty much, it really drives home a very, oh yeah, so with the KKK, like when they're showing those clips, it was interesting. It was interesting how like they're playing rap music and they're showing the KKK like doing their thing, and I feel like that was just more of like intertwining like gang violence with the KKK.
Yeah,
They made it like a little mixtape video. I'm like,
Yeah, because
all right,
they
it's
also
like kind of
gave them
weird.
they gave the black people white masks.
Yeah,
They were shooting
yeah.
on,
Yeah.
But the
Like-
thing is, like, I thought what happened to him was that he was trying to get brainwashed into thinking like this is like the equivalent of what you're doing, and they give you some sort of flashbacks of like the black-faced, white-faced
Yeah.
KKK member,
Mm.
as a black
Yeah.
person, and showing him that he's no different, and they have him spinning around in the chair, So I think it's like, in a way, it might have been him wrestling with the idea that, oh wait, I am doing the same thing, just under a different pretense,
Exactly. That's something that's really, you can really deep. I like your opinion, Benny. Like, yeah, like again, I think this movie gets probably a solid 8 on the whole, which, I mean, critics didn't really like it that much. I think critics were probably 50-50 on it, but the audience were more like close to a C, like where you were at, Benny. So, I mean, and that's kind of what helped it be a kind of a cult hit among fans, and I can see why with this movie, because, again, even though this movie was, yes, cheaply made back in 1995, being $6 million, I
Wow.
mean, they were still able to get a lot done that $6 million after.
Oh,
Yeah, some of the effects don't, like some of the masks and the effects, that looks like rubber and total green screen, and yeah, those actors are really acting like they're on fire and shaking, like, oh god. But I applaud this movie for coming out at a time in 1995. Like I said, do you guys agree with me that this is the Get Out before Get Out in a way?
It's kind of hard to say. So, like, I think like what makes Get Out interesting is that it's more of a depiction of like white people who are trying to befriend black people, and the thing is, it's like it's more of a, how can I put it, like it's more of like just like things aren't what they seem kind of depiction in Get Out, versus with this, it's like just inherently showing injustice, which is why I don't necessarily think it's an ample comparison to the two. I think they nail familiar feelings, because I definitely think that the horror vibe, if we're going to call it that, is shared between the two. But I think like Get Out and this movie set out to accomplish different things, so I don't necessarily think I would call it that.
The way I would think about it is, I feel like this movie was more, it dealt more with like morals, like laws, like, real, and I mean, Get Out obviously talks about issues too, but with this movie, they're talking about, like death and killing and injustice and all that. And I feel like it's more serious in that sense, rather than Get Out, is more about, it's more like, I guess if you study psychology, it's called like a folk way. Like it's not as strongly, what I mean? Like, like interracial relations, like it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not as,
I get you, because I do see a kind of comparison, because both movies kind of challenged the white establishment in a way. With this one more established a more conservative, more racist white establishment, while Get Out target more the liberal white establishment, and how the liberal white establishment can still also appear very racist as well. And and that's what I really liked about Get Out and this movie, because again, they both Get Out and Tales from the Hood spoke about themes that black people feel when it comes to being a black person in America, with the gang violence, with abusive fathers that, again, abusive fathers can be a father who just leaves you. He doesn't always have to hit you, you can just leave. And that's something that in black culture, that is a joke in black culture, but it is a sad truth in it too.
Yeah.
So, and it talked about, again, politicians don't really care about black people, and it talked about police violence. And again, I think both movies had a separate ways of dealing with it. But Benny, I know you mentioned that you don't see it as a horror movie. I personally do, because I feel like what really scares me in horror movies is if I can realistically imagine myself in those certain situations and I can see things going south. Like, especially with today, with police violence, I can see that happening to me. And that's something that when I first watched it, I would just keep on thinking about that in my head. Well, you know, I mean, I'm not exposed to gang culture, so I'm not worried about gang culture. And with,
I think the way that I depict horror, though, is more like, not necessarily that it's scary, but in the sense of, like, not really believable either, but the way that I look at horror is more like getting jump scared, you know, like typical ghost stories, those kinds of things. And so for me, horror has never really been like this kind of thing, like, oh, you have a zombie and it's a horror movie. You know, for me, horror has mainly been like something that like is meant to surprise you, I guess, in a lot of ways. Like, just like kind of not necessarily about how fucked up it is, but just like you didn't really see it coming. You know what I mean? Like, in a way, like I wouldn't even really call Get Out a horror movie, because like it's more about people's aggression towards each other. You know, and I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, to me, like horror movies are your typical like The Conjuring, Insidious, that kind of thing. Versus this, to me, is more like, you can call it a horror of like society. You know, like you could be like, this is what happens, but you know, like, I think it's not horror to me because we've already seen these things happen in real life many times over. And I think that's a good point.
That's a good point.
But yeah, it is horrific to see these things in real life as well.
Yeah.
So, again, differing opinions here, folks. Please check this movie out. It's a really good movie, and it should get more talked about, especially in today's climate and media. And I guess in editing, I have to put spoiler alert for the whole entire movie. But yeah, so I think a Mo would have given it a B as well, 8 out of 10. So we can wrap this up and say this whole movie gets an 8 out of 10 from the Any Thoughts cast. So definitely watch it. We recommend it to any of our friends who want to watch something off the beaten path that you probably have never seen before. But just
like the best way I'd recommend this movie is like, if you were like me as a kid and you loved Goosebumps, this is like the black version of Goosebumps. You know, like, it's the best way I can put it. Like they nail similar feels. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I think. Like, it's like Goosebumps, I would argue, was never really scary. It was just more like chilling. You know, I think that's kind of the way I would put it. And this kind of nails a similar aspect.
All right, then. Iverson, any last words you want to say?
Not really. Yeah. So just it was a good watch. I remember Amog asked me last week about it, and I remember I was 20 minutes into the movie when I was trying to watch it the first time around. I got really tired, and when I saw the guy flying around, I was like, "Oh, let me shut this off. I'll watch it tomorrow." But then I was like, let me just keep going. You know, and I watched it all the way through last night. Early this morning, technically, and today, and it was actually a good movie. I actually really enjoyed it. I felt like it, you know, there are definitely some messages in there, you know, with some satire, some comedy here and there too. At least I saw it as comedy. But I mean, I felt like that was kind of appropriate because the topics they were talking about were kind of intense. You know, they were kind of like serious and real things that, you know, Black people do deal with. So I think, you know, maybe the silly killing, like the guy flying around and the boy twisting the paper and the man turning into a thing of Play-Doh looking like a snake or whatever. I feel like that was the kind of like, you know, kind of add some comic relief to it a little bit. But it was a good movie. Great watch.
Yeah, very great watch.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
So again, I guess to sign off everything again, email us at thoughtgang65. That is THOTGANG65 at gmail.com. Iverson, where can they find our Twitter at?
The Twitter is Thought Podcast 2, THOUGHT podcast, no spaces, 2 at the end. Twitter and Instagram, Amog will be in the description.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's gonna be in the description.
Yeah.
And also a trailer will also link to the trailer bill in the description as well. Again, we watched. I think I watched it on YouTube. I think it's like $3.99 to rent on YouTube. So it's relatively cheap. You watch anywhere. But yes, folks, give it a watch. Hope you guys enjoyed, and see you on our next episode. Bye bye.
Peace.
Peace.
Sure.